Good morning to everyone. Welcome. Just let me to share my screen. Welcome to today's joint HS Booster EU and Standardisation EU training session. I'm Ivana Mijatovic and I'm head of HS Booster Training Academy. I'm very happy that today we have our distinguished guest, and I'm pleased to announce our topic for today. It is Standardization in Practice series, and our topic is when is the right time for standardization in research processes. Thank you for your time and willingness to spend it with us. And I'm honored to introduce to you our today's trainers, Dr. Christian Goronsi and Professor Knut Blind. I will say a few words about our trainers today. Dr. Christian Goronsi is Senior Project Manager at the German Institute for Standardization. Since completing his PhD in chemistry, Dr. Christian Goronsi has been working in the research and transfer group at the German Institute for Standardization, connecting research, innovation, and standardization. He supports research projects in transferring their project results into standardization activities. Dr. Christian Goronsi also coordinated EU-funded Bridget II projects. Our distinguished guest, Knut Blind, today he is the head of Business Unit Regulation and Innovation at Fraunhofer Institute for Systems and Innovation, and he's also a professor of Innovation Economics at the Technical University Berlin. He's one of the most prominent researchers in the field of standardization, and his researches focus on analyzing the connection between regulation and innovation, and specifically his work deals with the impact of regulatory framework on the innovation behavior on companies on macro and microeconomic level. His research focuses on standardization as a knowledge and technology transfer channel, and due to his scientific achievement, he is elected member of German Academy of Science and Engineering. Please let me say a few words about today's training. So today's topic is time. So standardization is one way to valorize research results, and many research projects aim to expand the network of their users for their outcomes through participation in standardization process. However, in research processes, time is often considered as the root of the problems related to standardization. Research projects have limited time, and standardization activities usually require more time than research project life. Today, what we want to find out and what we want to know is how can we increase the certainty that standardization activities with research projects will have adequate results, and how can we align research activities with standardization activities. This training session is dedicated precisely to this issue. The joint training session of the StandICT and HS Booster initiatives aims to clarify the right time for standardization research processes. Our guest speaker, Dr. Christian Goronsi, Senior Project Manager from German Institute of Standardization, will provide us basic information on how German Institute for Standardization support researchers, and he will outline the process of developing the INSPEC within research projects. Professor Knut Blind, one of the most prominent researchers, as I already said, will provide us some insight to the best practices related to time for standardization in research processes. So, just a few information. A recorded version of this webinar will be available as soon as possible at HS Booster Training Academy portal. And we would love to hear from you. And during the trainer, you can write your question in the Q&A section. Christian, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for introducing me. Let me just share my screen. So here it is, and we can start the presentation. So yeah, as said before, my name is Christian Ronzi, and I would like to give you a presentation about how the German Institute for Standardization, DIN, supports researchers and innovators, and also how the DIN specs, which is a specific standardization document which we quite often use in research projects, will be used. Before I will go into this, we are prepared a Mentimeter session, so I think, Biana, it's your turn.
Thank you very much. I will share my screen for a moment. So hopefully you could go to the website menti.com and scan the QR code you can see on my screen, or just use the code 14962168 and answer the question of what is your experience in standardization. You can say none at all, use standardization documents, or developed a specification, or member of technical committee. So this is our question for you. I will read the code one more time. So 14962168. Okay. Okay, Christian, back to you to comment on these.
Yeah, I think this is a quite common survey, as we have it in many research projects when we participate. There might be some members of a research project having some experience, like developing a specification or being member of a technical committee. I'm glad that at least a huge amount of you already use standards, because it's important. But if you have no clue on standardization, it's a pity, but it's not your fault, because as I also know from my previous experience as researcher, I never have done anything with standardization documents before. And to give you a little bit more insight what standardization can do and what it's about, I will share my screen again and give you an input. And the first question I always get is when I go somewhere and say, yeah, I'm doing standardization and innovation and research topics. It's the first question is always, why are we taking care of this? And I find this sketch quite interesting, because it's showing an issue. We had 120, 130 years ago a new innovation, which was electrical power. And there was nobody taking care of standardization. This had the reason was both not knowing about standardization so much these days, but it also had some industrial rule or industrial background, because there was a fight between DC and AC. Living with it, if we now go on journeys these days, we have always to take our adapter so that we can connect our electric devices with the power provided in that country. Now we can say, yeah, this has been over 100 years ago, but we did the same mistake more or less in the 90s and 2000 when we developed the mobile phone. And if you went somewhere and you don't have kind of a Nokia standard phone, you couldn't charge your mobile if you had not your own power supply. And now we have taken a lot of efforts to standardize the power supply, which has been also regulatory forces needed to say, okay, there's only one plug for mobile phones within the EU, so that we can charge our device everywhere. Okay, and now we're coming to the point, have we learned something? And if you go to the electric mobility side, there is at least a good example where standardization was taken into account quite early, both for the small car section, as is here, but also for the heavy-duty vehicles, where the standardization plug is developed, and there will be one plug for all heavy-duty vehicles within Europe. So now you ask yourself, why should I take care of standardization? And if you know about standards or standardization documents, you know what are the needs of the market you are working in. Because in standardization documents, there are interface described or security issues you have to take into account. And if you are aware of these, you can guide your innovation in this direction that you fulfill these needs later on. Standardization is also quite important to support financial resources. You can see it in the calls of the European Commission for Horizon project, the standardization mentioned properly, but also if you ask for private funding for maybe some funding company, they want to know if you are aware of standardization and if your innovation is in accordance to existing standards, because otherwise this could lead to stranded assets. Standardization or standardization documents help you to transfer your innovation to the market, because when you're on the step to enter the market and your innovation is in accordance to standard, it's quite easy to you to fulfill existing interfaces or to also receive trust by the consumer side if you, for example, have security issues, security standards fulfilled. Working in standardization committees, it gives you a broad access to a network you might not know from your typical researcher side. So as I know before, if you went to conferences, you see the same people over and over again. And in the standardization committees, that's much broader, representing both industry, society, and you get access to new people you might not met on other conferences. Yeah. And you also increase your own visibility. So how is Dean now supporting researchers? Before going into that, I would like to shortly introduce Dean. So Dean is a service provider for standardization. We are a non-profit organization. If many people from Germany think we are a public authority, but now we are just non-profit. And our main goal is to represent the interest of the German stakeholders within European and international standardization. However, we are also part in more than 60 European and 15, or have been part in more than 16 or 15 national research projects up to date. And on the left-hand side, right-hand side, you can see some quite famous examples of standardization documents. The upper one is a paper size, and the bottom one is the ISO freight container, which is the basis for the international trade as we know it today. So, what group I'm working at? As I said before, the main goal of our company is to develop standardization documents and develop research, develop standards, and representing the interest of the national stakeholder in European or international standardization committees. However, we have also a group dedicated only for research and transfer. It's called FUT. And if you go on the chart, it's allocated directly below the work, below the departments of standardization with different topics, but not directly connected to them. So this gives us both the opportunity to be on one hand side independent from the standardization committees, because sometimes innovative topics are not considered in these committees or does not fit in their working plan. So we have an extra group to deal with this, but we are also connected to these committees. So if we can somehow transfer them directly into these ongoing work in there, we can do so. So what we are doing, we acquire funding for our stakeholders to fulfill standardization needs via research project. As I said before, we participate in research projects. We have our own funding scheme, it's called Dean Connect, where we support innovative ideas to develop a specification. And we have also the Mobility Office and the Smart City Standards Forum, which are horizontal topics. So As you're researchers, you know there are more or less 3 roles in a research project, and I can say from the inside, we have taken all in the past. Project coordinator, it's not very often because there are not so many calls or topics that deals with standardization in total. However, if standardization is the main goal of the project, we also have been project coordinator in the past, like the Bridget 2 project, which was dealing with connecting research and standardization. In many projects, we are project partner, like being responsible for a task or work package, which is dealing with standardization activities. Which activities I will show you in a second, but this is the main rule. Being part of a project is helpful because we see what are the needs, where are gaps, so we are much more closer to the partners. And therefore, we take often this project partner role in research projects. However, if we have projects that are very familiar to standardization, then we only propose subcontracting so that we can just focus on the development of a standardization document. So it's a very dedicated small task. And then we can bring our expertise into the project to develop standardization documents. But when we're just talking about project partner, we have more rules than just developing a standardization documents, and that they are useful that I will show you now. So first of all, when we are participating in a research project, we assess the standardization landscape. That means we show what standards exist, what are the relevant technical committees, and most important, what are ongoing activities that are relevant to the project, that the project can contribute to, or which can affect the project during its lifetime. The second step is then the evaluation of potential standardization needs of the project. So working the project, mostly after 1.5 years, we can see, okay, there's a gap in the standardization landscape, and you can see how we can address this. What we also do quite often is so-called standardization potential workshops, where we really ask the project what are the needs and develop a full, many projects, several ideas that can be standardized within the project. And last but not least, if we have one of these potential need identified that can be transferred into standardization activities, I will show you in a second which it can be. We will take care of the project management so that the researchers, so you, can really focus on your project work and does not have to take care of all the administrative stuff dealing with applying for standards. And also compared to normal standardization work, we support you in many cases more, like providing some text from the input you give to us so that we can much more support you than compared to normal technical committee work, for those of you who already know. So what are typical results? First of all, as I said before, we provide this overview. So we have a visualization of the standardization landscape. This can be both either on a report side, so you have a PDF, what showing you the relevant committees or what standards exist. It can also be on a web page, as we did it for the electromobility sector. You can have a look afterwards. The links are behind these presentations, so you can have a direct look later on. So what is helpful, you know what standards are relevant for your research project. Then the second step is we do the visualization and promotion of identified standardization needs. This is mostly an internal report, as there are some internal things considered. So I have no example here, but we can we have at least a report for the Commission or for other funding agencies that showing this was discussed and these needs were identified. And this is also helpful both for the project, but also for us, that if the project say we can share this document to the relevant technical committees, they also get insight what is needed by the science side. The third thing we do quite often is development of a standardization strategy or roadmap. I give a document you can see on the funding and tenders results side, EU Horizon 2020 results side, where we provide, first of all, standardization landscape in the area of quantum key distribution, and also identified gap and develop a roadmap how these gaps can be fulfilled. And we are also going in liaisons to technical committees. These liaisons give us the opportunity to both be part of a technical committee, comment on standards under development, providing input, but also gives the project the opportunity to react to standards developments. From the standardization document side, as I said before, we contribute then either to the standardization project directly, like giving input to standards under development in the committee. We also have projects where we created or initiated a new working item proposal or working group. For example, the REACH project was leading to the funding or to the establishment of the ISO-TC working group 2 in ISO-TC 314, dealing with elderly society and develop an international standard within a research project. What we do quite often, of course, is develop specifications. I will show in a second how a DIN spec will be developed. For example, the BIM-proof project developed a marker for BIM applications in new build housings or construction sites. And also what sometimes happens is that we develop standards directly in project. Here's the Speedia project. But to be honest, this is only feasible in specific project and calls, as we have here both the technical committee included, but also all other things. But in some certain cases possible. So showing you now what inclusion of a standardization committee can bring to you. The other side I would also like to mention, there is no fixed way to go. And this is always what we do in research projects. Like say, okay, we cannot promise that we will develop a DIN spec in the end, because it might not be useful for the project, and developing an NWIP has more impact than developing a specification before. So that's why we quite often say in research project, we need to assess the landscape, and also we need to identify the needs and evaluate it so that we can see in the end what is the perfect standardization solution for you in your project. So the last part of my project will now be about the DIN spec. Just to shortly summarize, there are several types of standardization documents having different developing times or grade of consensus within. So for example, if you have a small group, a company, or like Tesla, or some industry some industry group, they can develop corporate standards. And of course, they can be successful, but they also can be dead in the end. I don't know if you mind the fight between Blu-ray and HD DVD in the 2000s. So there you can see there were two different standards and they fight against each other, and only one in the end, but leading to a lot of money be burned on the other side. So this can be a solution, but it can also be lead to stranded assets. On the other side, there are the pure standardization documents like a DIN, an EN on ISO standard. Of course, if you want to have everybody included and provide a high degree of consensus, this needs time to develop, and therefore the DIN spec was developed for the specifications. On national level, it's DIN spec. On European national level, it's the CWA or the EWA on ISO level, and technical specifications, where you have both shorter development time, but also a transparent process that everybody can be part of and can leading to a higher acceptance of the document in the end. So shortly, how the DIN spec developed before I go into detail. Everyone can initiate a DIN spec. They just need to contact us. We will do some internal steps. I will show in a second. And then within a working phase, at least 3 parties have to participate and develop the content of the DIN spec. And in the end, we publish this document. So you can say that DIN specs are fast, as you are not bounded to any time schedules from standardization documents. They are flexible, but they're also transparent, as there is a step where everybody can participate, and they are well accepted and recognized. So how these things are seen within the specs, I will show you now. The initial process is working this way, that the initiator submits the proposal to us. We first have our internal review, asking relevant technical committees if there are standardization work going on in this direction to avoid double standardization. After that, our chairman gives the approval to continue the initiation process, and a business plan will be developed and made public on our webpage for at least 4 weeks. And everybody who wants to participate in this DIN spec can come to us and say, I would like to be part of this DIN spec project, and he has to be part of the consortium. After the business plan, and also there might be some objections, the proposal has to be approved by our executive board to ensure that this is really transparent and everybody has the opportunity to intervene in this process. Yeah, in the development phase, we have a kick-off meeting where the consortium is constituted, and then we elect a business workshop leader, and the project will start working. There's a contract between Dean and the initiator, but this is an administrative stuff. We develop a draft, and the draft will, if your consortium wants to have it, be published for 2 months for commenting, and then in the end, the draft will be adopted and published. Within research projects, of course, due to the shorter timescale, we often skip these this commenting phase. But I have also several projects where I've done this commenting phase due to certain issues like safety or whatever. And in the end, the DIN spec will be adopted by the consortium. We will have also approval by our executive board if everything was in accordance to our internal rules. And then it's published on the BOID website free of charge. And the standardization community will be informed that this document has been developed. And in the end, after 3 years, the DIN spec will be reviewed. So we will ask the consortium, is this DIN spec still state of the art, or should it be withdrawn, revised, or should this DIN spec proposed as a formal standard? You can also say after 3 years, okay, we would like to extend the validity for another 3 years, but in the end, the DIN spec can only be valid for 6 years if it's not been revised completely. So a new edition will be developed. So just to summarize, the DIN spec is much more smaller from the process step. You have the initiation, the development, and then there's the DIN spec. To make from this DIN spec an official standard, you have to involve all stakeholders because it's not mandatory. We have to reach full consensus, and the draft has to be mandatory publicated. And when these things are fulfilled, they can develop a DIN standard. So to come to the end, I will just provide you a research project, how it's working with all steps, and then we are more or less done with our part. So here I have a national project that's dealing with carbon capture and utilization. And we are working in this project for 3 years now. And there were several steps. So we have the initial phase, the analysis phase, the development phase, and the dissemination phase. And there were more or less step by step, and this is quite normal for a research project. In the initial phase, We introduce the basics of standardization to the project partners, and we also get into exchange with our project partners and also with the other projects under this funding measure to ask for the identification and also to clarify what standardization can really be used for in a project. There's always this issue with standardization and certification. So there are the exchange quite useful to talk on this. Then we evaluated the standardization landscape and made a report what standards exist in these areas. And we also made various exchange to identify standardization potentials, also within workshops. And in the end, we by now developed two specs already, one for terminology, so something which can be done quite easy in a topic, so on a low TRL level, and also a measurement procedure for a certain CCU process. So there are two different things. We published both in English and German to ensure the broad visibility. And currently we still think about a DIN spec for lifecycle assessment for CCU. And in the end, we also want to have these results disseminated. So we have several exchanges with relevant technical committees. We have participated in relevant multiple workshops and events, and we presented these activities also to other stakeholders. So seeing of time, just the last webpage I would like to give to you. It's the Standards Plus Innovation website, which was part of the Bridget 2 project, where you can also find a lot of information for you dealing with standardization and innovation. And having this being said, through, if you have any questions or comments, please come back to me afterwards, and I will be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you so much, Christian. It was very nice. We will have a question and answer session after the presentation of Professor Blind. So, Professor Blind, the floor is yours.
Yeah, hello everybody. Good morning, everybody. Well, always noon. Let's see. Yeah, sometimes my two screens do not work well. Yeah, Ivana already introduced myself. Therefore, thanks for that, and also thanks for the invitation to contribute to this webinar. In addition, I have to mention that I'm chairman of the group STAIR, Standardization, Innovation and Research at Senelec. Therefore, this topic is more or less my hobby horse since quite some time. Today, I'm also representing Standardisation, which is another EU project focusing explicitly on ICT in contrast to Booster, and also not just focusing on researchers and the research organizations, but here we have also this academy which aims to really educate the next generation of standardizers for the EU. And I have also to mention finally that hopefully soon the first study of the European Standardization Panel will be published, where we address explicitly this linkage between research and standardization. Unfortunately, I cannot share yet the slides and the new insights, at least not on the slides, but it will be out soon, and maybe it's also an opportunity for a follow-up activity. I was asked to talk about research and standardization. That means, in contrast to the previous speakers, I'm coming from the research side, because also I'm researcher both at the university and at the big public research organization, the Fraunhofer Society, and therefore at least maybe some of the participants are maybe linked to these organizations in the one or other context. It means I will talk about R&D because I probably you are more familiar with that, but Then the interesting aspect is to show the interlinkages between R&D and standardization. Christian talked about the DIN and the services and the processes they offer. I'm a little bit more on a more abstract level. That means I'm not focusing on a specific SDO and also not on a specific technology, but I'm a little bit more generic. It means we'll talk about these linkages. And also then what is the impact of standards on research and innovation. And I don't know, Biljana, can we now share our first question?
Yes, thank you. I will share my screen and once again ask you to go to the website menti.com and answer the first question for Professor Blind. And this is, which types of standards do you use for your research? You have several options here. You can choose multiple options. The code is 24002762. I will ask Gabriel to share the link in the code in the chat. And the possible answers are terminology standards, measurement and testing standards, compatibility and interoperability standards, product standards, process standards, health standards, safety standards, environmental and management system standards. So we will wait a couple of more minutes. Great.
Maybe we can come back later to this figure.
Yes, yes.
Towards the end of my talk, and we'll have a second question, but let's wait that a little bit.
Of course. Of course.
Let's see what the others will then say to these generic questions. Okay, then you give me back my
Yes, I will stop sharing my screen. Floor is yours. Thank you.
Let's move on. Because the relationship is not an easy one. Yeah, it's complicated. We would say in other contexts. And first, let's talk about what is research and development. And I don't know whether you know these definitions, but they are quite key. On the one hand, they are important for the collection of data and also the statistics, but they have also implications for tax schemes. Currently, there's some countries have kind of very supportive tax schemes for companies if they spend on R&D, and therefore this is the basic definition. Means it's all the creative and systemic work undertaken in order to increase the stock of knowledge, including knowledge of humankind, culture, and society, and devise new application of available knowledge. It means that's the basic definitions, and it's about really then finding solutions for technical and scientific problems, and also then to move on the common stock of knowledge of humankind. That's the basic definition. And within research and development, we make a distinction, or the OECD makes a distinction between three different types. We talk about basic research, which is really very experimental and theoretical, and it's really just about acquiring new knowledge. Probably most of you are not in this area. Then there's pure basic research. Here, the idea is then really this is really very theoretical and very generic. The oriented basic research is already addressing maybe some future problems. And this brings us to, and that's probably what most of you are doing. I do not know your background, but you're doing probably applied research, and especially the Horizon programs are focusing on Horizon on applied research, because here it's about finding solutions to very specific problems and objectives. And sometimes or often it's based on basic research, but the point is that it's very, very applied, and it's also performed not only by universities or research organizations, but also mainly by companies. And this brings us to the next step of research. I mean, the D in the acronym of an R&D is experimental development. This is the work where we draw on knowledge in order to generate new products, new processes, or also improve existing products and processes, including technologies. And here, the main actors are then the companies and not anymore the research organizations. And there are some kind of criteria which have to be fulfilled if we talk about R&D. Means it should aim to find new things. Novelty is an issue. It should be based on original, not obvious concepts and hypotheses. That means some element of creativity is needed. Then there should be some uncertainty regarding the outcome. It must be also systematic in the sense you have plans, project plans, budgets, etc. And the result should be also then at the end maybe reproduced, it may be transferable or at least reproducible. These are the criteria for R&D. And this brings us to, and that's also important just to understand a little bit the economy between standardization and research. What's not R&D? Education, training, that means what we are doing today is not R&D. Also scientific and technical information, that means all the library services, patent services, etc. Then the administration of R&D, that means all the admin, which are maybe also related to Horizon 2020 project or Horizon Europe projects. And then also the specific implementation of products and services in companies which have no novel criteria are not R&D. At least in 2015, big data projects, the OECD excluded, and also space elaboration. That means expenditure for satellites to collect data is also not R&D, according to the OECD definition 2015. And it has to be remarked that the OECD is really updating these definitions, in general on at least 10-year journeys. Therefore, it might look different, and there are some borderline aspects. Prototypes and pilot plans are included. Industrial designs is split, and after sales services, patenting and licensing works are excluded. These are not R&D. Also data collection and also compliance with standards and regulation. Now that's important. That means if you comply with standards and regulation, this is not R&D. And at least in the last definition, testing and standardization is not R&D. And therefore, we have here not a very integrative approach in this concept. That means what's not included is the maintenance of national standards, also the calibration of other standards between testing. That means these activities are not R&D activities. In 2015, it was already discussed whether to include these things, and currently, and we will see that probably in the release of our report on the standardization panel for DG-RTD, there are some suggestions to maybe consider a more comprehensive approach. And this brings me back to a picture published 2009. This is an outcome of a Horizon project where we did some systemic kind of work about the relationship between research and standardization, where we said, okay, on the left-hand side, there's research and development, and on the right-hand side, there is standardization. And there are two types of transfer channels. From your perspective, is you are doing research and development, and Christian kind of offered you some modes how to transfer these insights into standardization. It means either you are proactive, really pushing this out, or in some contexts, also standardization committees, technical committees ask for solutions. This is the point. But we have also to see there are barriers. because there are not so many researchers involved in standardization, which is. And the other way around is, and that was the questions also on the Mentimeter was, yeah, you might also use in your activities and research work standards. I mean, this is the so-called recursive knowledge and technology transfer, where the standardization bodies provide documents which can be used and in your work. And maybe just one remark, I do not remember whether this was mentioned. The DIN specs and also the CWAs are in general open access available, whereas this is not the case for all standards, which is also maybe at least for some a barrier, and we might also see here some changes in the future. It means now coming to what you're doing in your research, you are, and this is a technology transfer model which we apply to standardization. You do research, you publish, scientific papers, maybe most important, patents. That means via this way you codify this know-how. There are also meanwhile other ways using social media channels, etc., to distribute this stuff. In standardization, it's about finding consensus, coordinate different things, and at the end, the output is the standard. And the interaction can take place in different forms. On the one hand, standardization, the committees might really screen the scientific literature, might screen the patent databases. The latter is very important, especially in the ICT field, especially in mobile communication. You might know maybe the patent fights around our smartphones, and now currently about 5G and maybe follow-up generation of mobile communications. But also there's the issue of tacit know-how. That means what the researchers know in addition to what they have written down in their papers. And here the idea is that maybe these people should really go into the standardization committees in order to kind of lower the barriers and improve the knowledge transfer. And then at the end, the standards are hopefully implemented, and there might be also some advantage for those which are involved in standardization. And we know that especially companies which have active kind of participation in standardization committees are performing better regarding innovation. And then there are also feedback loops, because sometimes, as I said before, in standardization, there might be coming up questions, problems, which are then addressed to the research community, maybe to find solutions. And also companies, if they implement standards, they might face problems. And this goes back on the one hand to the standardization committees, maybe to revise standards if they are not really working well enough, or if there are new scientific and technological developments. And on the other hand, it might be also going back to research to find really completely new solutions, and also maybe create completely new standards. Now looking at the different types of standards, and in the first Mentimeter, I even differentiated further. Here, these categories are well known because they have been established by researchers before my time, and based a little bit more on what are the function of standards. Standards can define minimum quality, compatibility. They reduce variety, and Christian's presented the A4 format. That's a typical standard which really defines just the space of this piece of paper, and which generates some positive aspects. And then we have information and measurement and testing standards, which are more having an information kind of function. And going into details a little bit, why do we have minimum quality standards? They are important, especially to define kind of criteria regarding health, safety, quality, and other aspects, which the consumers and the users want to have. It means here they reduce the information asymmetry between the buyers of products and the sellers. It means maybe not necessarily so important for US researchers, but for the markets, it's important. If we do not have these standards, we might end up at the end with just bad quality, and therefore they are quite important. Often they are also referenced in regulation in order to protect the consumers from dangerous products. Car safety standards, in food, we have a lot of minimum quality standards, and maybe not so key for you in the research. Then compatibility interface standards. Here the point is that many products are now really put together by different components. That means here the interfaces have to work, and also the plug example is also shown by Christian, showed that if we are not really kind of well defining the interfaces, then we have a problem. We might need adapters. That means we have switching costs, and especially in the IT field, these standards are key. In the past it was telephony, nowadays it's the internet, social media, because they generate these network effects. If we have all the common technology, then there are many opportunities to be connected with other people, and this creates the big value of networks. In the past it was telephone networks, and there was internet network, whereas nowadays are social media networks, and all the big success, especially in the IT field for IT products, is really requiring compatibility standards. Therefore, especially IT or people doing research in IT, they have to be aware that there are specific standards defined, and if you try to maybe produce components in these networks, you have to really align them with what's already there. Otherwise, it's becoming quite difficult. Therefore, if you maybe active in the 5G world, it's maybe not very smart to ignore these standards. Variety reducing standards like the A4 format, this is more at the market relevant, because here, if you have one specification, you can enter mass productions, you can realize economies of scale, meaning that the more you produce, the lower will be the average cost, and this makes your products cheaper. For US researchers, not so key, but for the market success, important. And finally, information and measurement standards. Here, they facilitate the communication and the knowledge transfers between products attributes, but also technical and research information. That means these are important also for researchers, and are key also then for the functioning or well functioning of the research process. And here is some kind of one example, and a very kind of dramatic example is what happened in nanotech, because nanotech deals with these very tiny particles, and there was a shock, at least in Germany, because the German research ministry spent billions on nanotech research. And then in 2005, the UK, the BSI Institute published first draft standards on nanotech, and the Germans were quite kind of shocked, because they just forgot the topic standardization, and especially if you want to move forward, you have to define, okay, what are nanoscales, what do we understand when we talk about nanoparticles, etc., etc. And also another issue is regarding measurement, these tiny parts. There are different ways to measure things. You can look at the weights, the volumes, the surfaces, the diffusion behavior, etc. But if you do not agree on a common measurement approach, you might come to different results, or maybe you come to the same results, but applying different methodology is not the same. And therefore, this was more or also kind of a little bit a trigger for our systematic work, where we say, okay, and now bringing back the different phases of research, from pure basic to, at the end, to diffusion of products in the market. Standards play a role from the very beginning, yeah, because at the beginning you have to talk about what we are talking about, yeah? And especially if the topics are very complex, there are maybe also different disciplines talking to each other. You have to find a common language, and what we see is that after this nanotech shock, for example, in Germany, also in research programs and calls for projects, the topic of standardization already appears quite early, yeah? Because one has to be realized that setting standards means also finding common terminology, yeah? And we had this now recently in AI. Currently, there are activities in quantum technology which really address this topic. And then if we move on, then these measurement and testing standards are becoming important, because if you want to promote a new technological field, you have to have an agreement on which measurement and testing methods you are going to implement. And then if you move forward with maybe even trying to produce first components, you have to look at the interfaces. If your products, your components are not fitting to the whole infrastructure, then it's not going to work. And at the end, you have to assure that the whole compatibility is given, but also that the quality is really on a decent level, because it's not really smart to bring products to the market which have health, safety, and other risk, and now meanwhile also privacy issues are playing of a big role now later in the market. Economies of scale, etc., and also network externalities are important. For you as researchers, is not the main point, but therefore the focus should be on semantics and measurement testing, and we will have later a look on the results of the Mentimeter, what we say. However, and this is kind of the overview of the positive impacts. Information function provides the knowledge, allows collaborative research and innovation activities. Variety reduction, as I already said, is more than later in the market stage, maybe not necessary for the researchers. Quality standards, especially if you are working in some toxic context, have an important role, because they create trust in innovative kind of research fields, but then also technologies and products at the end. Compatibility, I already mentioned, they create variety, kind of also promote network externalities, but also maybe, especially if you have different generation of technologies, you are maybe avoiding a login into all technologies if you are so-called backward compatible. And very kind of relevant and interesting is a quite recent paper about the role of standards as an insurance mechanism, especially in industry. There's always the risk that you fail in your research and your innovation activity, and kind of a standard could be some kind of a fallback option. That's the good thing. On the negative side, if there are too many standards, we call on the patent sides, we call it patent thickets. There might be also standard thickets. If standards are too detailed, especially from industry's perspective, they may create spillovers to competitors, which is not really an issue. And now currently on the geopolitics, standards are becoming a more important role. And I know from some standardization activities where the EU excludes some other countries from common standardization processes, because they are not really into or interested in generating knowledge spillovers at early stage. Variety reduction, yeah, good, you have less choice. This is then maybe at the market an issue, maybe create market concentration, maybe also for you as researchers, not an issue. But another point is if we are too early in standardization, we might really make the mistake of a premature selection of technologies. For example, Europe was very proud on really releasing the first mobile communication standards in the early 90s, but at the end it turned out that the technology which the standards were based on was not the best one. No? Yeah, variety reduction might limit the incentives for radical innovation, because the mainstream is sitting on is using this mainstream technology, and it's very difficult then to come up with some radical solutions. Quality standards, if they are too demanding, market players might get kicked out. Compatibility standards are becoming difficult if they are owned by single companies or a few companies having all the patents on specific standards. And finally, also there might be some issue of locked in. And finally, this insurance function creates then the incentives for more kind of incremental instead of radical innovation, because there are some economic rationales to do so. If you want to see more, look at the ISO report I did in 22, where this is a little bit more elaborated in further. Just to conclude, yeah, are standards now good or bad for research and innovation? Overall, there are some examples of also other authors. They are certainly kind of a good instrument, especially I see them as a catalyst to innovation, although one has also to be aware that they can hamper innovation. But at least if the standardization process is open and transparent, then the negative implications might be not there, or at least limited, and we can harvest the positive ones. I think, if I remember the agenda right, I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now it is time for Mentimeter session. And Biljana, can we see the results?
Yes, of course. I will share my screen for the first question. Here are the results. So 21% said they use terminology standards, 8% said they're using measurement and testing standards, 15% said compatibility and interoperability standards, product standards 13%, 8% process standards, none uses health standards. This might be interesting. 5% is using safety standards, 18% environmental, and 13% management system standards. Again, none is using some other types of standards, but I think they are all here. Note, do you want to comment on this maybe?
Yeah, as I kind of underlined in my talk, standardization should really kind of already consider early phases. Therefore, it should be considered in defining the terminologies right away from the beginning, also in new fields, which helps really to researchers also to communicate and collaborate within their countries, but also across the world, and that's key. And what we also see, and that's the environmental standards are becoming more and more important. Also, we did some work on climate change and how standards can tackle that. That this is becoming kind of more relevant in the future. I think across all areas of technology and research. Therefore, interesting.
I also add a comment on this.
Yeah.
I also find it very nice that terminology standards are so accepted and used. because from a non-expert side, as standardization project manager, be in research project, because we normally have no clue about the research is what is in the project. We somehow recognize that the researchers talk to each other, but have not the same language, meaning they talk about terms that have different interpretation, and therefore it's quite important, especially if you work on big project, be there European or national one, to define on a common language before go more into detail. And this was also one thing we did for this CO2 project, this terminology about carbon capture and utilization, because, for example, if you see on the terms defossilization and decarbonization, they are used quite often similar, but they have completely different meanings and totally different, they lead to totally different reactions. So therefore, it's quite important to really think about what is the term and also what is its definition, and have consensus on this to use this as a basis for the project, but also for the community you are working in.
Thank you for the confirmation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Do we dare to ask them the last question?
Yeah,
Yes.
please.
Yes. Okay. So we have one last question for you today. And once again, I will share the link in the chat. The code is 34996702. And the question is, to which types of standards could your research contribute to? Once again, the scale are the same. Let me just share this link.
By the way, I shared my email. If somebody.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Okay. So we have some more answers here. Okay.
Yeah, this mirrors a little bit the other picture. Because researchers are in general more at the left-hand side active, but more and more the input into environmental standards are an issue. Huh? Management standards I'm a little bit interesting, because normally they are not really so much in the focus of researchers.
Okay. Thank you.
Just we have one question for our both trainer. Just a minute to see that. Can you please recommend tools to perform the standard search and screening? Would you like to share your answers?
Christian, your business.
Christian?
Yeah, so there are different tools. We have at least the websites of the standardization bodies provide you a very basic opportunity for standardization, for standard research, like finding titles or giving the abstract of the standards. But if you want to have a look on it, you have to check whether your libraries has kind of an agreement with your national standardization body in most cases, that you can have access to standards. At least for German side, there are public open access points where you can go to and have a look on all standards and all existing. So there's a tool, of course, there is a tool like Nautas from Dean that is very helpful for standardization, but it's quite powerful and maybe not the best in the beginning when you're starting with standardization research. And However, this is, for example, the DIN specs or also the CEN workshop agreements developed within a research project are free of charge. So you can either go on the DIN webpage and have a look on these DIN specs or on the CEN website for the CWAs, and you have a look for free in these documents. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Christian. Professor Blind, would you like to add something or?
Yeah, I just put in the chat the link to the ISO tool, which I think it's for first search, certainly an appropriate one. The kind of the critical problem or the challenge is that if you are more than in electrotechnical stuff, then you have to go to the IEC, and I think the IEC has not. This tool looks different. I also have not the link here. It's a problem. I know also from other research that the big German universities, they have access also to the full text. Yeah? But I know this is not the case for all universities, neither in Germany and nor in Europe. Yeah? And there is currently going on discussions also at the high level forum on standardization about this issue, and because in research we are moving more and more to the open access world. The big universities, also research organizations, have also now open access deals with Elsevier and other big science houses, editors, and therefore this is certainly an interesting development which we have to follow in the future, how our researchers can get access to standards. And the CWAs, for example, I think they are all open access meanwhile?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
No? I don't.
I'm not sure. I think this is only mandatory for the CWAs developed within Horizon projects or other research schemes. I'm not sure if they're all open, which have been developed, for example, within national standardization bodies. But as Knut mentioned, it's of course it's important to have access to, and if you have questions to standardization, every standardization or national standardization body will also provide you first insight or first answer if you like. So if you have any questions, just contact your NSB first. So for example, in Germany, it's DIN or DKE, in Spain, it's UNI, in Italy, it's UNI, in Netherlands, it's NEN. So there are a lot of national standardization bodies. And if you have a question, the first thing you can do is ask them, and they will provide you at least some first hints, and then you might find a solution how to go on. And of course, this work we will have shown in this presentation, giving an overview in a research project, it's also quite extensive to find this, to really provide this overview. So this is nothing you do within 10 minutes, and therefore it's for projects also quite useful to include standardization bodies, of course not in all cases, but in many. Regarding the open access of standards, I know there's a big discussion currently going on funding of standardization. Currently, the system is working this direction, that the people having an advantage of using standards, because if you use standards, you have an advantage. For example, you just use your printer and say it can print A4 and B3, and you don't have to care on any special issues, so that the people using standards are also paying for them, because there's a lot of work inside. You have to manage this commenting phase. So it's two sides of the medal, to be honest. Like there's a lot of work in between having this consensus, which also needs somehow to be funded. And for several European NSBs, there are non-public authorities, so there might be a way how to deal with this issue.
Thank you so much.
One last comment to this standardization research. For ISO, you have this overview, you have this on national level, and I also would recommend to go to your national standardization body, because there are different types of ISO standards. There can be ISO standards adopted by the EU, non-adopted. So sometimes it's even hard for a non-expert to see which document is valid for you. And so therefore, if you have questions, of course, you can do a quick research, but you can also come to us and we can see if you find a solution.
Thank you so much. We had our last training session related to gap analysis, and if you are willing to find out researcher side of the story, our young researchers, Shweta Malik, provided us a lesson related to gap analysis and standards. Thank you so much. And I would like to share my screen to finish our session. So thank you. We had great opportunity to have Dr. Christian Goronsi and Professor Knut Blind with us. Thank you for providing us very important information, and we are looking forward to cooperate with you in the future. Just few information for all of you. HS Booster Training Academy had now 6 webinars for you. You can find it at our training platform, as well as written material in already 25 topics related to standardization. On the other, please try to use our standards orientation tool. If you are new project, if you're writing proposal for a new EU-funded project, please use standard orientation tool. It is our new online resources to increase expertise in standardization and to provide you first step toward informed standardization strategies. Furthermore, if you have time, use our Norma. So Norma is our chatbot, and she's ready to provide you quick answer and quick information about HS Booster and general information on standardization. And give her some time, and she will become more accurate and better in providing you answer. So thank you for this for today presentation. Once more, Christian and Knut, thank you for information you shared, your knowledge and your expertise with us. See you soon in our next training session. Our next training session will be dedicated to technical specification, and see you soon.